This is a meeting of the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners, November 14th, 2024. This is our legislative meeting. And as always, we start with silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join us in silent prayer. Amen.
Amen.
Let's introduce ourselves on the dais. Christy, we're going to start with you.
Chrissy Rischel, Assistant Clerk.
Leslie Hervey, Clerk to the Board. Stephanie Summerow-Dumas, Commissioner.
Jeff Aludo, County Administrator.
Patrick Dressing, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney.
And I'm Commissioner Denise Driehaus. So I'm going to offer a motion to excuse Commissioner Reese from this meeting.
Second.
Commissioner Driehaus?
Yes.
Commissioner Summerow-Dumas?
Yes.
And also a motion to approve of the minutes of the previous session.
Second.
Commissioner Driehaus?
Yes.
Commissioner Summerow-Dumas?
Yes.
Thank you. So I have one public comment card, but my understanding is it's for the public hearing. So we're going to hold on that until we open that hearing. So the hearings don't start until 1:15. So why don't we move right into the comments and motions of commissioners? And Commissioner Summerow-Dumas, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Just a few comments. Excuse my voice, just a dry throat. Just a few things, the White House weekly briefing that I participate in. Tom Perez, who's a senior advisor and assistant to the president and director of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, talked about investments that the Biden administration is making in the Hispanic serving institutions. So they're very committed to that. Erica Dinkle-Smith, Special Assistant to the President and Senior Labor Advisor, talked about the protection of $1.2 million pensions, and they want to make sure that they are protected. Benjamin Buchanan, Special Advisor for AI for the National Security Council, discussed key accomplishments in this year since the Biden-Harris administration. A couple other things. The State of the City address I attended, Mayor Aftab laid out his vision and priorities for this year and also for next year and some of the accomplishments that have been made. The Office of Addiction Response, I just had an update meeting on them. They're moving forward as we try to distribute the monies for those that are having concerns in the community as it relates to addiction prevention, treatment, and housing. So they are moving right along. I just wanted to make a general comment. Program that I created and that my colleagues supported, Beyond Your Imagination, for since January till now, we have involved 269 participants, and Beyond Your Imagination is a program through JFS where those young people that cannot obviously go to events that they can't afford and different opportunities that can expose them or expose them to cultural enrichment. This year we reached 269, which is a total of 38,314. And for the total, which is we've only been doing it for 2 years, we've reached 1,352 participants who maybe would have never experienced any of the events that they've experienced, for a total of $71,779. Let me see if I have, another thing I wanted to bring up, and I thank the administrator because I'd asked about the free food store food bank and whether or not they were using smaller partners to distribute food. And I just got a copy of it. I don't know if Jeff shared it with you, but it's 4 pages back and front. I wanted to know what partners they were using because we have been giving lots of money to the free store. And I just wanted to make sure they were reaching out and how many people they were reaching out to, and it's quite a few. So we'd be very happy with that. So that's all I have.
Okay, great, thank you. So I've just got a couple things. The first one is related to our relationship with the state of Ohio. So I'm on the executive committee of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio, and we had our legislative reception this week. And so I was in Columbus advocating for things that are good for Hamilton County and counties in general throughout the state of Ohio with the state senators and the state representatives that attended that reception. So I was happy to represent the commission up in Columbus. And then the next morning was the One Ohio meeting. So I'm the representative for Region 2 up in Columbus for the One Ohio meetings. And we talked about these awards. And as you alluded to, Commissioner, 8 awards have gone out to Hamilton County agencies related to addiction. It's $2.9 million has been awarded so far. We have 10 more to go, and they are in contract negotiations with the people at One Ohio who are doing that work on behalf of all the counties throughout the state. So that's good forward movement. We've been waiting quite some time to get these dollars into the community, and so I'm delighted that finally they're moving down into the community for, as you say, treatment, prevention, housing, criminally unjust involved individuals. So very good news for Hamilton County. Today, I participated on a panel related to the Mill Creek Trail. This is something that we've invested in or are investing in, trying to create trails in communities that have not seen much investment from this community in the past related to bike trails or byways for people to, not only for bikes, but for pedestrian walkways to get to and from jobs or from the grocery store or whatever. And so this investment in this particular part of the county is unique, and I think it signifies a shift in how we're funding bike trails and moving into communities that have not seen that kind of asset investment in a long time. So I was happy to participate in that and talk a little bit about what we're doing as a county to help that move forward. And then lastly, probably most importantly, Lila is here. So I have a new Director of Public Affairs in my office. Her name is Lila Foley. Lila, please stand so we can all see you. There she is. Welcome, Lila, to the county. Today is her first day, so she's on the job for a couple hours now, but so far so good. So, so thank you, Lila, for being willing to work at the county. She comes from the state. She took your job. I'm sorry, Commissioner. I had a lot of resumes.
Right.
No, she comes from Rachel Baker's office. So Rachel, as everyone knows, is a state representative, and Lila had a very successful career with Rachel and has decided to come back down here to Cincinnati. So I plucked her away from everyone else, and I'm delighted to have her as a member of the office. So that's all I have. We are pretty close to time on the public hearings. So I'm going to go ahead and open the first one, which is related to IBI. So James Noyes is here. James, I know you gave us an overview of this issue at the previous hearing, but do I need to open the hearing? Oh, okay. So I'm going to make a motion to open this hearing.
Second.
Yes.
Dumas.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I forgot you, didn't I? Oh my! I do this all the time. I forgot Jeff.
Well,
All right. Well, hold for 1 minute. Well, let's do this. We'll go. I'm sorry. I apologize. All right, James. Let's go to you. And we've opened the hearing. So if you could give us just a brief overview, and I know we've got Gaylord Poe in the audience as well. So I don't know if he's going to want to say anything, but please frame the issue for us.
Thank you, Commissioners, and thank you, Vice President Driehaus. I will be brief. Last week, we went over a little bit more detail. Again, this is the second public hearing in regards to IBI, the Inspection Bureau Incorporated's request for a fee change in their schedule. They have a fee change of $10 increase for their application fee from $50 to $60, and again, a $5 increase on their trip and job fees from $35 to $40. Again, this was advertised. I want to express to the board that I did not hear any calls. The advertisement places my phone number, my direct line, to call if there are any questions. I have not received any communication in regards to this from the public.
Thank you. Gaylord, did you want to say something?
Just ask James
Sure.
a question. Yeah.
Sure thing.
My apologies.
Can we maybe talk about why we need an increase just very briefly?
The
You said it
IBI
the
has
last time, but-
yes, and they submitted in the packet a overall request for the increase. They have had multiple increases in costs from their standpoint. There were labor cost increases. Mr. Poe will be able to address specifically those. If you would like, I can refer to the documentation that was submitted, and if you would like, I can do that, or Mr. Poe can go over that.
Y'all can do it. Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. It's been a while since I've seen you all.
Yes.
First, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to continue to work for the county. We have served this county since 1888. I've been with the Bureau since, well, I've been there 42 years, going on 43 now. Sometimes I feel like I've been there since 1888 myself. We are private. We issue permits and make electrical inspections on behalf of the county. We operate at no charge to the county. And I just brought a couple of stats and a couple of comments with me. And of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. But through October of this year, we have made 6,770 inspections on behalf of the county. And we've received 538 plans to perform electrical plan review on for the county. The county represents about 35% of our business. The rest is divided up between the city of Cincinnati and almost all of the municipalities within Hamilton County. In addition to that, we participate with damages from fire, flood, storms. We also perform surveys on behalf of the fire departments and the building department too, when something needs to look at that needs us to look at it without a permit being in place. We do that voluntarily and at no charge to them. 90% of our users are electrical contractors. And we also, before we ever entertain trying to secure a fee increase, which like everything else, prices are going up, costs are going up, we get, first we are a IBEW electrical contractor member. So we're a union shop, and we contact not only IBEW, but all of the major electrical contracting organizations. Tell them what we're wanting, where we think it should go. We have a discussion. Once we're all on the same page, then we can come with much confidence to you and say, we'd like to raise our fees, and the people we charge them to have already approved them, and here's their written approval. That makes life a little easier. I know I heard from I wasn't here at the last meeting, but my staff told me that there was a couple of questions about residential do-it-yourself contractors. They are extremely small percentage of our business, which is the person who I like to say watches a video on YouTube and says, okay, I can wire my house or wire my pool. And we suffer through it with them. They're entering a world they're not used to, and usually they only do it one time. They say, from now on, I'm going to hire it out. But it's almost always residential. It's almost always a challenge. It's almost always a cause of worry for me because we don't know what they don't know. And you can only look at an installation at different periods in time, and next thing you know, you got to do a final and walk away and hope the heck they got it right, especially when it comes to swimming pools. But I won't go there any further than that. Since our last fee increase, we've had 4 major hourly wage increases each of the years 21, 22, 23, and 24 through the IBEW, and they were each of those years $1.75 an hour, $1.60 an hour, $1.50 per hour, and another $1.50 an hour. It was effective June 3rd of this year. This is the 4th year since our last fee increase, and the 7th year of our $35 trip charge. So considering all, it's actually past time to be asking to raise our fees. And I got virtually no pushback from any of the contractors. The Home Builders Association wanted us to make an adjustment, which how we reported and how we interacted with them, and we did. And I think James can verify we had a very successful meeting with them, and so all is well there. The total average increase is about $16, a little over $16 to any construction remodeling project, which when you think about the grand scheme of things over a 4-year period, we're not adding much to the cost of a job. So that is all I would like to say. And if you have any questions, I'll answer them. If not, I'll sit down and shut up.
It's really helpful to get that context. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Commissioner, do you have any other?
No questions, yeah.
Okay. So James, would you come back up? So is there anyone else here to speak to this increase? Okay, seeing none, please tell us what our next steps are.
You would close the public hearing today. I have a resolution that has been submitted for next week. If the consent of the board is to move forward with that, then they would then adopt that at that meeting. 30 days afterwards, that could become effective. There's a 30-day period from that standpoint. And then it'll go inactive on the 1st of January of 2025. So the next steps are the resolution, which will be before the board next week.
Okay, great. Thank you. If there are no further questions, is there a question?
Yeah, just one question. You said we'll go active the 1st of January, so, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how are we going about notifying the people that it will impact?
So we will, on our side, we have a fee change that we will notify folks on the fee changes for both IBI and also from our the planning and development fee increase. So that increase will be sent out. That will be notified on our. In our office. We traditionally aren't going out and advertising that to the general public. We will notify the Home Builders Association, the various folks that we deal with, AIA, ACI,
And on
of
your
the increase.
website.
Correct. And we'll put it on the website as well.
Sure, okay.
Yeah,
That's all
sorry.
I had.
Great. All right, I'm going to make a motion to close the second public hearing.
Second,
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
yes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, now we're going to move back to Jeff Aludo. And any comments?
I told you I didn't really have all that
Okay,
much,
here we
but
are.
you're going to put me on the spot. I'll make something up. There's always important stuff going on at the county. Just a couple of things. On Tuesday, the 19th, I will present the 2025 budget recommendation to the board. So try to get the board an advance copy of that so you can look through that in advance of the actual presentation. But that will be on Tuesday, the 19th, and we'll also provide a schedule. I know that Bridget and John Bergen are working with your staff on a schedule for presentations and hearings and a prospective date for budget passage. So just wanted to advise the board that this Tuesday we'll be doing that. Also, a week or so ago, the board had passed a resolution putting the final funding in place for the Mercy Health Building acquisition. Right now, we're looking at a closing date on that facility of November the 26th. So I'll keep the board apprised on that as well. But as of that date, we should own the property and begin the process of charting out the renovation procedure that will go on to get those departments in there. So I'll keep the board apprised as we move forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the updates.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to move into our second public hearing. So I'm going to make a motion that we open the hearing regarding the MSD 2025 budget.
Second,
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes,
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
thank you. All right, Diana Christie, the director, is here with her team. And Diana, I'm going to ask you to introduce your team.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioner. I have here with me, I'm Diana Christie, the Director of MSD. I have here with me today Jenny Richmond, she's Deputy Director of Operations, Reese Johnson, Deputy Director of our Capital Program and Chief Engineer, and Joseph Schuster, who's our Fiscal Officer. We've also been working very closely with the county team, so you're going to get a bit of a tag team here today on our presentation. Sure I'm operating this right.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? So Larry Falcon is here to comment to this. Larry, would you like to go before or after the presentation? I prefer to do the presentation. Very good. Don't let me forget that I've got the card up here. Thank you. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. And so again, I'm here today to speak to you about the MSD operating budget. We also have our proposed capital budget for 2025. I'm going to turn it over to Reese Johnson to do the capital budget. And following our presentation, Assistant Administrator Holly Chrisman is going to present on a rate recommendation. So I will jump right in. Just a reminder of MSD, what we are and what the operating budget funds. So we have a 24/7 continuous operation. We operate through a system of 3,000 pipes throughout Hamilton County. We treat over 160 million gallons of wastewater daily. We do that through 9 treatment plants, 100 pump stations, and we're serving about 750,000 customers in our service area. And through the consent decree mandated wet weather improvement program, we've been adding assets to our system to address combined sewer overflows. So things like green infrastructure you see there and the wet weather facilities that we're building, of course, then become part of our operating budget. And those expenditures have to be accounted for in the budget that you're seeing. Just a quick glance at our service area. We do serve most of Hamilton County. We have small parts of Butler, Warren, and Claremont as well. Shown on this map are just our 7 large treatment plants by watershed. You can see there several of the largest treatment plants on the Ohio River, and just geographically where they are throughout the county. But jumping right into the operating budget, so this is the proposed operating budget for 2025. This is an annual process, as you know. The county commissioners must approve legislatively MSD's use of ratepayer funds to fund both the operating and the capital budget. So we are here after having spent a fair amount of time projecting our needs for 2025 with a goal of only requesting that which we will need and spend in the year. We start that process in the summer, but really all year. Joseph is always tracking our expenditures and really, trying to project what we will need based on any increases in the coming year, and submit a draft to the county administration in August. And then we work together to really meet the financial targets that the county has set based on the financial health of the district and also what our ratepayers can afford in terms of increases. So that's the process that brings us here. And what I'm presenting now is the 2025 operating budget request. This is a condensed version. I just want to share with the commissioners and anyone from the public here today or listening. There is a budget book that details this, provides this in more detail on our website. We've provided copies to you. So in the budget book, this would be more detail on pages 11 and 12. This, as you can see, is a snapshot of the overall budget broken out into a subtotal, which is our operation and maintenance budget. And that consists of our personnel, and that's our personnel for 7 MSD divisions, the non-personnel costs for each of those divisions, and I'll talk more about what that consists of on the next slide. And then other non-personnel, which is the cost for our general fund overhead, fleet, and our capital outlay for office technology equipment. So that total this year is about $147 million. This is a little over a 2% increase from 2023. The grand total when we add in the SBU program and the debt payment is nearly 244 million. Again, overall, the increase from 2023 is about 2.1%. So I'm going to dive into the operation and maintenance portion of our budget a little closer and explain the increases that you're seeing. So again, the operation and maintenance is our, really our core operating budget, separating out the SBU program. And this consists of a personnel, non-personnel, and other non-personnel. And this year, while we do show a decrease in the personnel costs, this is not due to any decrease in the personnel and the staffing that we have. And in fact, we are carrying over the same level of the same number of positions to operate MSD. And those positions have, we've accounted for cost of living adjustments, we've accounted for also vacancies in that number. But what we were able to do this year is recognize that we weren't capturing all of the eligible capital labor costs. And by moving some of our labor into the capital budget, we were able to reduce the overall personnel request in our operating budget. And that's just because of the way that's accounted for in an allowance in the capital budget. The non-personnel is where the bulk of the increase is. These are costs you've heard about the last few years continuing to increase, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And then the other non-personnel, also a decrease, and that really is, we had a slight increase in the general fund overhead, and so we really looked for some efficiencies and also some deferments in our fleet budget request and our office technology and equipment allowance, again, to meet the county's financial targets this year. Although, you see some of both, we were able to reduce the overall increase. You can see there, I'm showing the figures to really just reflect here on this chart. It just demonstrates that of the MSD divisions, the non-personnel budget is the highest in, of course, our core operating division. So that's your wastewater treatment, wastewater collection, and then, really throughout the remaining divisions. So diving in a little bit closer then on where those increases are, they're primarily in those operating divisions. And in our wastewater treatment non-personnel costs, we have had some pretty significant contract increases. So many of our contracts are negotiated and are rebid every 3 years. And so in the last several years, these are some examples of the increases that we've already had to absorb into our budget. And these are the need for some of the increases going into 2025. So I've shared there the chemical costs for our treatment plants really going up, 39, 43%, and sodium hypochlorite is, really jumped up. And these are things that we buy a lot of, and we buy in bulk because they're part of the everyday treatment process. Solids hauling and disposal continues to go up. We had a new contract negotiated in 24, so that increase had to be reflected in the 2025 budget request. And security, this is security of our facilities. So our large facilities do have 24/7 security, and this is a service cost that we've seen increases in. We've also found the need to expand some of the coverage in our outlying plants where we did not have sufficient coverage. And so then I want to turn to the request for the sewer backup program. So again, we separate that out from the overall operation and maintenance just because of the proactive nature of this program, and really just highlighting this year that the program request is $11.2 million. This is not an increase from 2024, and that is because in the current year and in 2023. We have had sufficient funding to cover all eligible needs for this program. So any property owner that has experienced a sewer backup, we have been able to respond, clean up, pay for damage claims. And then a large portion of this program costs is for the sewer backup prevention program, which is also required by the consent decree. And that is where properties that are eligible because they have experienced 2 or more sewer backups, we will design a solution for them, and those properties are also included in this cost here. So I shared just kind of a breakdown. This is pretty consistent over the last few years. The annual budget, more than 60% is really those prevention program costs, because that's where we're designing solutions and installing them in homes. And then you can see the response in cleaning versus the payout of damage claims. And we do update that chart monthly on our website. And so we're tracking the annual activities here, but on our website you can see the full program details since 2004. And we definitely have years where we have had much higher expenditures and years where we have had lower, and that is because the really heavy rain events lead to more sewer backups, more claims, and of course, then more properties eligible for the sewer backup program. So I am going to turn to Reese Johnson to come talk about our capital budget, assuming we'll go through everything and take questions at the end. Or do you want to do questions now?
Sure. Do you have a preference? So that was the operating budget. Now we're going to move to the capital budget. I think it might be helpful to have questions as we go, because we just tied up the operating budget.
It's a lot otherwise.
Yeah, it's
yes.
a lot of information. And so, Commissioner, go ahead, and I've got a couple questions myself.
Okay, as it relates to the categories that you listed, I was wondering for whoever may get this packet that we have a definition of personnel, non-personnel. I was looking for the categories. There's 3 categories that you have. If we could just, for instance, you said non-personnel is fleet and the chemicals and all of that. It's just a little blurb about what each category is about. That's a minor point. But also, under personnel, I know for quite a while you've had a lot of vacant positions that have not been filled. Unless that's
Yes.
what I remember. So I was wondering, as far as the estimate, if we could reduce the estimate in your personnel budget. So you've been working for quite a while without the positions that you may need, but you've been working well without them, and maybe that estimate could be lowered a little bit. Along with the SVU program, I was really surprised. The 7.8 that was used in 2023, 7.6, because as you were saying, it goes up and down as far as how much we spend. And I was also, because I would, in 2021, 22, I remember it being lower. I could be wrong. But if we could maybe, as far as the estimate of 11.2. Did you guys hear me, or do I need to start again? Thank you. You didn't get that. Okay.
Be happy to. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, the 11.2, if we could, oh, that sounds much better. Okay, if there can be a reduction on the estimate for the SBU program request. I understand what you were saying, there's a prevention program, 60% of that is prevention, but to lower that estimate as far as it relates to what you're asking for. Those are the only 2 things that I had. Denise, you didn't tell me.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like? Would you like me to respond now? Or yeah.
Sure.
There's a couple of things I would certainly appreciate your comments, Commissioner Dumas, and so I was trying to be a little more brief today, but happy to take your recommendation on the personnel and the non-personnel and what those really are. We do have some description, but I'm looking at it on page 8 of our book. It's not perhaps the detail you're looking for. It's more about the increases and not what those are. But just to be clear, that the non-personnel is everything from buying the chemicals I talked about, any equipment purchase, any supplies, in addition to professional services that we need for accounting and even legal services. So we have a lot of those non-personnel costs by division, and they're broken down in a bit more detail in the book. But I will take a look and see if there's something more of a definition that we could add.
And not necessarily for me, but those who may get this are wondering why the cost is so high. Just a brief thing. Okay.
And then I wanted to respond on the vacancies. So for our personnel budget, we have already accounted for, so we project out the cost of all the positions that we have, and then we credit and we account for the fact that many positions will remain vacant throughout the year. We do have a high vacancy rate, but we are making up that. We're starting to see a trend. So we're budgeting for 62 positions to remain vacant, which means we cannot fill. We're not asking for enough funding to fill those. At this time, I am not recommending, I do not recommend that we look at eliminating any positions. We are not fully staffed. The one thing we are trying to do is make sure the positions are in the the titles and the classifications where we need them. So things have changed over time. In certain areas, we may need to reclassify certain job positions to make sure areas that we, whether it's electricians or plumbers or sometimes IT professionals, we may reclassify some things. But overall, I do not feel that we should reduce it any further, and really just need to work on continuing to hire. The last thing, I will just comment, but I think this is something we can review further and respond back maybe at the next hearing. But the SBU budget is something that, I feel you could potentially reduce just in terms of the initial request, because as long as we have enough money to respond during emergencies, if there was a trend where we were getting more, we had a lot of storms and we had more eligible property owners, we could come back to the board. And we've always said we would come back to the board if it exceeds this amount.
Right.
So if that is something that the commission, that the board desires, we could certainly look at lowering it. We just didn't increase it this year. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm paging through the additional information you provided. It's a lot to go through, and we're just now seeing it. So thank you for that level of detail, and it helps inform the very brief presentation that we've received. So I too was going to mention the SBU program. I'm glad that we are taking into account that we want to have that fully funded. I too, though, noted that in 24 it was 5.8, in 23 it's 7.6, so well below the 11.2. And so I'm open to this conversation about maybe a little bit less. But if we were to do that, what would that mean to your budget? I mean, where would you, if we would free up some dollars for something else, what would that look like?
There are some things that we have deferred, as I've said, in the base budget, in the O&M budget, that were initially in here. Some of the costs that we've seen, I'm trying to recall, but I know we had a few things that we really, we had to defer to the following year. Some needed purchases. We also, there are things that we await the outcome of contract negotiations, of bids, competitive bids. So we project how much something might cost, and that can change. So I do think that if there was money able to be moved, we would look at refunding some of the things in the O&M budget. The office and technology equipment allowance, for example, includes certain IT upgrades and things of that nature that are important.
So something for us to kick around. And if we were to, and knowing that we could always come back, right? If we had a significant weather event and we needed more money, and we've said this over and over again, I'm not sure everybody has heard us say it, but anyway, we've said it, that no matter what the pressure is against the SBU program, we are willing to fund it. It's just a matter of timing, right? Because we don't know what is going to happen in 2025 related to the weather. So if you were to then say to us, well, 11.2, we could use some of that for something else to advance, say, technology or whatever the category is, what would be a reasonable amount, would you think? Is it 10? Is it 9? I mean, we've underspent pretty significantly. What would be your recommendation if we were to try to right size it?
But just point out for 24, that's only through, I believe, October.
Okay.
October. So we'll probably be close to the same amount as our projection, that it would be about what it was in, which was
7.6
from last year. But I just, if we were going to reduce, I think, 2 million, maybe 3 million. So bringing it back down to 8 million or 9 million. Jenny Richmond may want to speak because she oversees that division and is maybe going to correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, well, you have that chart. Go ahead and speak, Jenny.
Okay. So as part of that, the spreadsheet that you see in the presentation and what's on our website, we did it
Can you introduce yourself?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Jenny Richmond, Deputy Director over Operations. So what we did with that spreadsheet that is on our website is we made it more of a graphical representation so that you can see the trends. And as you can see, as far as, so this top line would be the number of calls that we get. And we have the two big spikes, obviously the storm we had in 2016 and another one, there was another one back in 2011, according to this. But the spikes are with just the phone calls. But then as you start looking down in these other numbers, other graphics here, you have the number of cleanups we've done, the number of work orders we've done, the number of people that accepted cleanings, and then the number of settlement checks that we processed. And you can, the green, the very bottom one is the number of settlement checks. That number falls off dramatically, and it only spikes usually later in the same year or the next year of when we have those big rain events. And as of now, in 2024, with it raining right now, don't want to say it out loud, but we haven't had that huge rain event where we would see a large spike in those settlement claims late in the year or early in the 25 budget. So taking that kind of information into consideration, I think that there is room for us to decrease that if the board is willing or willing to entertain the idea of using it for other reasons. We have a significant cost, and one of the things that we talked about early on is the ash lagoons at Little Miami that have been dormant for several years since we stopped incinerating there. And it is on property that we rent, that we lease from the airport. And so there is some significant risk with that, because we're seeing significant growth in trees and shrubs and things that could potentially puncture the lining of those ash lagoons. And so we're working with money that we have now to try and do some clearing to help avoid some of those issues, environmental issues that are potential there. So there are definitely some other items that we would love to entertain that discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I just make a comment about that? Just to be honest about it, I really wanted to see a lower operating cost presented to us, not necessarily diverting the difference to somewhere else. I wasn't really looking at that. I was just wanted to see a lower number come forward, but not that I'm against it, but that's what I was looking at.
So, yeah, well, that's just a different approach.
Yeah.
Then we got the answer to that though too. If it's 2 to 3 million, maybe that we could reduce by, what would the impact then be related to either any additional program we could fund or a reduction in the rate?
Okay.
Okay.
So
We're gonna.
there could still be a savings and fund that. So.
Oh, great. That's great.
All right, thank you. One other thing, you noted the security cost is up significantly. Is that, I heard you say an expansion to sites that might not have security now. It's not being driven by any incident, is it?
It's driven by a couple of things. One was an incident we had at our wastewater collection facility, which is where we, manage where all of our fleet is. So all of the vehicles, the very large, expensive vehicles that are used to respond to any kind of emergency and just to do the cleaning and maintenance. This was a while ago, but prior to the new contract and the prior guards, we did have a break-in. They were able to get into a building, able to get keys and steal a pretty expensive vehicle. We recovered the vehicle in another state. So the loss wasn't as great as it could have been because it was one of our very expensive vehicles. But it was a pretty, significant event to realize the importance of having that. We did have guards, but they weren't really performing their duties. So, we entered into a new contract, and through that negotiation, through that bidding, it was a little more expensive. The other driver, though, is our Little Miami facility. We have not had guards there like we do at the others, but that is our second largest facility after Mill Creek, and it is where we are doing a great deal of investment, as you'll be reminded when Reese speaks on the capital side. So significant construction projects there, and it's really going to be important for maintenance of staff and traffic and contractors for us to have security there like we do at our other facility. So that is an addition of, that we didn't have previously, and that's a big part of that cost.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'm clear on the other, and Commissioner Dumas already asked some about the personnel costs. So, all right, thank you. Why don't we move on then to capital?
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Christie and Vice President Driehaus and Sumra Dumas. Thank you for the opportunity to present our the other side of our budget, the capital budget. That's the next slide that I have. All right. On the capital side, 2025 is quite a year. You'll see the total 2025 capital budget request is almost $530 million. Now, the appropriations as part of this request is not that full amount. As you know, this is the approach that we have been taking is the appropriation upon passage of the legislation would be a total of just under $83 million. That breaks down to $45.1 million to enable projects that are going into planning and design and the easement phase to proceed. And then another $37.9 million that enables four capital allowances, pieces of our capital budget that allow a significant portion of really important asset management construction to move forward. And so those would be appropriated on passage of this budget. The balance, as we do typically, is of the construction projects for $446.7 million is for construction projects, and we will return to the board to ask for legislation for each of those projects when they are specifically ready to go. But we anticipate and fully expect those to happen in 2025. And as you can see, 2025 at the bottom of the chart there at 530 is a significant increase from last year. And my next slide gets to explain why it's been such an increase for 2025. We're facing two major projects that are large whip-driven capital investments that we've been working on for a long time, and they're now moving into construction. And construction is always the most expensive part of the job. The first one is the Mill Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant Influent Pump Station, which upgrades that plant to a 700 million gallon per day capacity. This is to feed the plant as well as the high rate treatment facility that will be coming online as the next phase of this project. It's part of the big foundational piece of our WIP. And that's $269 million for construction next year. The other is a really a brilliant project, the construction of the East Branch Ohio River Interceptor Extension. The commissioners have worked closely with ODOT and are really taking a great opportunity to leverage the amount of investment that both the state and the federal government is doing in this region to affect CSO reduction. There's 83 million gallons of highway runoff that's going to be taking off our system right down near the plant, right in the heart of our system, as well as fully separating two other CSO catchments as part of that project. So it is a big number, $163 million moving into construction next year, but one that is going to provide some very significant CSO reduction and as well as a great partnering opportunity. It's the best little project that nobody's heard of. There's a sewer underneath McLean Street that was built 100 years ago that is now being going to be reused as both a stormwater and a separate sewer pipe that is really a phenomenal once in a generation opportunity. So I'm really excited about that and the leadership that the commissioners have taken to move that forward with ODOT. The other thing that I wanted to highlight in our 2025 budget is the prioritization of SBU hotspots. So in addition to, and we were just talking about that, Director Christie was talking about the money that we have in our capital budget, in our operating budget to do that. And that's very tactical, very responsive to people who actually experience these. But we want to start getting ahead of them. And so we're dedicating some funding and an allowance in our capital budget to begin strategically addressing SBUs and CSO communities' capacity issues. We're excited about that. We hope that the commissioners are too, and that is an opportunity for us to help stem the tide there. We had some challenges in putting together this budget. As we all are, we know that there are more needs than there are funding, and so we have looked through our capital plan. We are proposing to defer 15 sewer replacements or rehab projects, as well as a design for a pump station replacement and one elimination, where we go and put a gravity sewer in. But there's about $30 million worth of capital improvements that just with the size of those large wet weather projects this year, we took the need to divert those, or excuse me, defer those into a future year. And we're putting a pause on new planning projects, meaning recognizing that there are some projects that we have to defer. It didn't make sense to start anything brand new in 2025, launch a project into planning. We're still being strategic. We're still taking the time to analyze the opportunities and look for planning opportunities, but we're not starting anything new next year. But we do have a plan, and that we hope that in future years, with some certainty coming out of negotiations with the consent decree parties, that we will be able to restart projects and restart the planning and new projects. And so in addition to the 2025 capital budget request, you were also provided with our 5-year plan, which we update each year, to give you an indication of not just what this year looks like, but what we think the next 4 years look like. And as you can see, these are subject to the ongoing negotiations, which will drive the decisions about how, funding and affordability. But we do have a plan. We look at the conditions of our assets, which ones are in the worst conditions. We balance them with the various risk factors out there, look at our future regulatory requirements, and chart out a plan that we hope is affordable and protects the interests of the ratepayers. So that is our capital budget request for 2025. And Holly's going to do the next section, or do you want to do questions now on the capital side?
Yeah, I think we should do questions now.
All right.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm looking at the capital improvement program for 2025 and 10 projects. And I had asked earlier, I think I talked to Holly about why the number is so high. And it was what I had assumed, that those were big, major projects. And that's why even though it's less projects in 2026, they're bigger projects. So I know what happens when you defer taking care of sewers and pipes, but my question is, not knowing the future, is there any way we could reduce from 10 projects to maybe 5 or 6 projects and reduce the amount of capital budget that you're asking for? Is there any way to reduce that number? Because we don't know the future. We don't know if we're even going to have the money for the following year. I heard you say earlier that the 15 sewer rehab replacements, you deferred that, which was $30 million. And I'm just wondering, and you guys know better than me, the ones that you deferred for $30 million, can you do those and then reduce also the projects, the 10 projects that you have to make it a more reasonable number? I don't know, like 400.
Sure, we reckon that $446 million worth of construction next year is massive.
Yeah.
And that's wrapped in 2 very large projects that are have been committed to the regulators as part of our Phase 2B. So the other ones, there's not much left. We have a couple of other construction projects beyond those 2. One specifically is the Kenwood Hills Local Sewer Project, which has been an ongoing effort of the county, of the health district, county health district, and as well as MSD to address failing septic systems in a particular area. There's another project, one of those very few projects that beyond the WIP projects, asset management project, to essentially where our CSOs go out to the river. If those aren't protected properly, the river comes back in. And so one of the few projects that have made the cut this year is one to address where 5 CSOs, where they're not properly protected. So Without that, what happens when the river gets high is then that comes back into our system, driving up our operational costs. So we really looked hard. We're happy to look again and to continue to look at options. But we really have brought forth only a few projects beyond the ones that we've made a good faith commitment to the regulators to do. But we're happy to look at some more.
And that's what I was going to ask you. You already submitted to the regulators what projects you're interested in. That's already been submitted, or?
So the county submitted on June 28th of this year their proposal for the Phase 2B that is scheduled to start January 1st. Those are still in, as you know, it's still under negotiation. But as the two large ones that I spoke about earlier are in that and have been spoken with the regulators significantly about in terms of those are foundational projects that allow us to do other ones in the future, depending on affordability. So yes, the county has made a proposal to the regulators.
So you're saying, I heard you mention about the 420 something million that we could possibly go to rather than the 526. Is that a possibility or not?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the subtotal of just the large construction project, the two large construction projects.
Is there any way we can, in order to reduce, we'd have to eliminate one of the projects?
We'd have to reduce one of those other ones that I mentioned. For example, the Kenwood Hills Local Sewer, the Lower Mill Creek High Water Dry Weather Project. There is there's only 5 going to construction, and there's 5 in design, and a couple of those designs are similar wet weather improvement projects that have to get designed so that they can go to construction on the schedule. But we can look at that. Of course, we can take another look at those projects.
Diana's looking like, I don't know how, I'm just looking at how we can reduce the cost somewhat, not knowing the future, knowing what we have to do. I know you can't do half a project, I understand that, but, and we're not knowing the future as far as our monies and any environmental conditions that may happen in between there. So Diane.
Yes, Commissioner Dumas, I just wanted to add, as big as that number is, that 446 million for construction. So again, that's the total capital budget cost includes some of our allowances. But those 2 construction projects, in particular the ODOT project, that is such a great example of partnership and cooperation, is going to be fully reimbursed by ODOT. So that one, and I don't know, I forget the total, but it's 163 million MSD. So we need the money to bid the contract, to pay the contractor, but ODOT is reimbursing that in full. So there is a financial side of this budget that, the way that funding is coming back to us, it doesn't have the same impact as a project that we fully cash finance ourselves. And the other very large project also has some low interest loan funding from the state revolving loan program. So that program or that project will be loan financed and repaid over 30 years. So which is a almost a 0% loan that the state provides through the Water Pollution Loan Fund. So those things, as I just want to point out, the cost to the ratepayers isn't a direct cost dollar per dollar because of those financial tools that we have.
Well, that's great. The reimbursement element really makes me feel much better. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Great point. We're going to get a check back for $162 million.
Right.
Slowly. Great point.
And to that point, and I think what you're getting at is the rates, right? How do these large increases in spending impact the rates? And I think that's Holly's part. Am I right, Holly?
She's already here.
Yeah. So not yet. Hold on now. But we're getting there because that's the shocking part of this. When you lay out the 5-year plan, the year we're looking at next year is very much higher than these other years. And so the question I think that we're going to have is what is the impact of rates? So we'll wait for Holly, because that's always the fun part, right, Holly, is to answer the question about rates, because we're always interested in keeping those as low as possible.
Yes.
But so that aside, because I have all kinds of questions about that, but beyond that, you talked about the SBU program and doing some work to remediate some of these hotspots, which we've been talking about for a few years, to keep those homes from experiencing this kind of flooding in their basement.
Yes.
So I didn't see a dollar amount associated with that. Is there one?
Yes, it's actually buried, unfortunately, deep in. So it's called the Urgent Capacity Response Allowance. It's $1.5 million,
Okay.
and that is an increase, significant increase from previous years. It's in the WIP, but it's something we wanted to really focus on is these hotspots.
I think it's a fantastic idea to focus on the hot spots to keep people's, basements from flooding. So I 100%, and you even in a previous part talked about some green infrastructure, which I think also is a very smart approach to trying to capture water so it doesn't enter the system or people's basements. So I applaud.
Thank you. And there's some projects we're starting a study we're starting this year to look at that as well.
Okay,
But
great.
Separate.
I think that's primarily what I had related to the CAP budget. So thank you for your
You're welcome.
presentation. Holly, we're going to ask you to finish up here.
Thanks, Reese. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yes, I am here to present to you a summary of the rate recommendations needed to support the budget as presented by MSD. To start, though, I just wanted to remind the public that's watching the board's role with rates. The board exercises the fiduciary responsibilities over MSD's operations, and in doing so, it provides sufficient funds to support the operations as well as the regulatory requirements necessary to operate the utility. And of course, you all get the fun job of negotiating the consent decree as well, and making sure we're in compliance with that. So moving on, though, to the 2025 budget and the revenues necessary to support it, I'm not going to reiterate, of course, MSD's presentation, but I do want the board to know that administration is supportive of MSD's recommended capital improvement plan as well as the operating budget. And I just want to take a moment. It was stressed, I think, by Reese and Diana. This was an incredibly challenging year given the consent decree. So I want to thank MSD as well as our team who's here, Joe Graff, JP Birmingham, Karen Ball, and we also have PFM, our financial advisors, on virtually. So it was probably one of the toughest years in my time in this role. And so as noted by MSD and as was discussed by the board just now, we had to be very mindful of costs given the consent decree projects. So as you've heard, several projects have been deferred to make way for those large consent decree projects that will begin in 2025. And the consent decree, as you know, is a federal mandate. The regulators being Department of Justice and US EPA, they received our plan back in June. And we have to make sure we are following the intent of that decree. And in addition to the capital plan, as you heard, MSD did reduce their operating budget slightly as well. So again, appreciate all their efforts. But just as a little bit of background, to fund the operations of the sewer district, MSD is not funded by Hamilton County General Fund or City of Cincinnati General Fund. Their funds come from ratepayers, which are three primary sources: the sewer service charges, excess strength surcharges, which are applied to commercial customers that discharge high-strength waste to an MSD plant, as well as industrial pretreatment charges. Now, when we were looking at the revenue requirements for this budget, as well as the 10-year consent decree, that's what we're looking at. We're trying to provide ratepayers with long-term rate stabilization and predictability, all in an effort to support the large capital and operating budgets. So when we are looking at the need for rate increases or for rate recommendations, we have a great county financial team. They work with our team and MSD to help determine the rate increase needed to support those budgets. The inputs into the rate recommendation include obviously estimating operating budget growth and consent decree Phase 2B capital costs over that 10-year period, as well as appropriate assumptions for various economic factors such as inflation and bond rates. Our goal during this 10-year period, as we've talked with the board about, is to keep rate increases flat as opposed to up and down like a roller coaster ride, trying to have some consistency over the 10-year period. So in general, so I talked about the first two. The last two we also look at when looking at rates are making sure there's sufficient operating cash reserves, which is important for when we go out to the bond market, for example, and also the debt service coverage. We are very proud of the fact that MSD has an excellent credit rating, and a couple of the key factors are those last two in terms of the liquidity as well as the debt service coverage. If those levels deteriorate, there's always the risk of a downgrade to our credit rating, which will, of course, then make borrowing more expensive and impact ratepayers ultimately. So we really keep a close eye on those last two. So this just gives you an example, and this will go into my next slide nicely in terms of historic rate increases. But you can see over the past about 8 years, what we call the surplus fund for MSD was pretty high from 16 to 22, and then started obviously dipping down. We like to see over the 10-year period of the consent decree right around 150 million in that surplus fund. It's going to go up and down, of course, year to year. But you can see for several years where we didn't have rate increases, it was because that surplus fund was pretty significant. And so just for a perspective in terms of rate increases, I think the board has seen this slide earlier this year. During phase 1 of the consent decree, for the first 6 years of that, rate increases averaged annually almost 8%. And then, of course, as you saw that previous slide, given the surplus fund and some debt that we had, we did not need to recommend or implement any rate increases. That obviously changed in the last couple of years, as you saw the previous slide, but of course you've heard from MSD the increase in their operating costs, as well as now the consent decree requirements. So taking all of those factors into account, and we are also attempting to balance, again, the legal requirements of the federal consent decree and the operational and asset management needs of the utility. The recommendation is a 4.5% effective January 1 of 2025. And again, it's based on those factors discussed in an effort to try and keep rates flat over the period of the consent decree as much as possible. And I will just want to repeat, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I am. This plan is consistent with the Phase 2B that was submitted to US EPA and Department of Justice in June. So again, and just to recap the need for this rate increase, it does generate the sufficient resources to sustain the operations of this important utility and to meet the rising costs that MSD reviewed with you. It also supports the capital improvement program, the consent decree. It improves water quality and improves public health. And as I mentioned, over that 10-year period, it does help manage revenue going into the future. Consent decree compliance, I think we've hit on that several times today. As well as, I can't stress it enough, this consistency with prudent financial management practices in terms of the liquidity, the debt service coverage, are critical for the future of the operations of the utility. With that, again, I want to thank MSD, I want to thank our team, and of course, PFM, our financial advisors, are on virtually if there's any specific questions for them.
Thank you. Before we get to commissioners' questions, I'm going to ask Larry to come up. The presentations have been made. Larry, you've got the pleasure of the floor for 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to speak today. And I want to thank my friends at MSD for the diligent work that's gone into this. I am going to suggest significant changes to their proposal, but I also want to acknowledge that you've got good, smart, dedicated public servants at MSD, and I appreciate their efforts. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the operating budget. As you've heard, $244 million and a proposed 4.5% increase in the rates. I want to suggest to you that you could make a 50% cut in those rates if you were to adopt the impervious surface fee that you've been looking at for approximately 9 years since 2015 when the Rate Affordability Task Force recommended it. MSD can verify that approximately half of what sewer ratepayers are paying for is treatment of sewage. And the other half of what sewer ratepayers are paying for is treatment of stormwater that gets into the sewer system. And stormwater should not be the sewer ratepayers' responsibility. It should be the responsibility of property owners who generate that runoff. And so with an impervious surface fee covering half of MSD's budget, which is the stormwater portion, then rates could go down 50%. In essence, our sewer ratepayers are overpaying by approximately $120-some million a year because we're using sewer ratepayers to pay for stormwater. It's just not appropriate. I want to look at the capital budget and recommend that we eliminate the Mill Creek High Rate Treatment Plant. It's a project that does not make sense. It is proposed in the Phase 2B proposal. It has not yet been endorsed by EPA. It has not yet been endorsed by the other participants in the consent decree litigation, and it has not been approved by the courts. At this point, it's just a proposal. It's a proposal that is going to take more than 10 years and more than $2 billion to reduce CSOs by 600 million gallons. That comes to about $3 a gallon, which is 10 times as expensive as the consent decree work that we've done to date, which averages more like 30 cents a gallon. And so if we were to do things like separation projects and green infrastructure projects, we could manage that same amount of water at a much lower cost. And to spend $268 million in this budget for a project that is not yet approved by the regulators or the courts is premature. We should defer that, use that to fund the unfunded capital improvement program, the deferred projects. They're looking for $675 million for basically keeping the wheels on the bus, operating the system. And those are projects that we really need. We need our system to continue working. And so, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment related to this public hearing? Okay. Commissioner, would you like to lead off, or
However you want to do it.
well, go ahead, and I'll go second. Yep.
Thanks for the presentation and thanks for your comments. I understand the need for a rate increase, and the commissioners have talked back and forth about trying to keep the rate increase as low as possible. I also had a question about the impervious fee, and if the board decided one way or another, as was said earlier, this item has been on the agenda for quite a while, for a few years, and if we did agree on the impervious fee, how would that impact the increase that we're talking about? So I'm very inquisitive about how that would affect our raise, the 4.5%, and whether or not the board is in agreement with it. We have not come to that conclusion yet. Let me see what else I wanted to say. How would we, I wrote another point, I scribbled all over, but I wanted to say that the need for the rate increase, those 6 points that were mentioned are very clear, I understand those, but I don't know what would happen if we delayed the rate increase to decide whether or not as a board, whether or not we're interested in going forward with the impervious fee and how that monetarily would impact the rate increase. So that's where I am right now.
Okay, thank you. So when I look at these rate increases, you know, I thank you for the history, Holly, related to the increases, but also the reserve, because that has driven a lot of the decisions that we've made since I've been here related to rate increases, because we had a significant reserve well over what we needed to, and in order to keep rates at zero for a number of years, we were able to do that because we had this reserve that we were spending down to get to the level that, you know, we need to have, but not so far over that we're just kind of stockpiling money. And so we had the luxury of doing that for the first few years. And the last couple of years, we've had these very modest increase of 3%, recognizing, and some of what Mr. Falcon has said, we've got asset management in addition to consent decree that we have to worry about here with this system, and it's tremendously expensive to maintain a system that's over 100 years old in some cases. And so it is just a challenging math equation when you think about trying to do the work that we need to do and keeping the rates as low as possible. And that's what we're always trying to do, is keep the rates as low as possible. And so we had some conversation about what that looks like over the next 10 years, knowing that we have to have some kind of increase related to the consent decree in particular and asset management, and whether or not we wanted to kind of piecemeal it over the next 10 years or rather offer something that's more steady, more stable, more predictable for the ratepayers. And that's where the 4.5 comes in, knowing that in some years we'll need more, in some years we'll need less, but the 4.5 is kind of the average out over the 10 years to allow us to fund the asset management portion, so fixing the system and maintaining the system, and all the consent decree pressures that we have, a la the federal government through an unfunded mandate that they have put upon our community years ago. So here we are. So Holly, if you wouldn't mind coming forward again, I have written down some notes also about the impervious surface fee recommendations, and Mr. Falcon talked about this. So this is a study that was part of the Rate Affordability Task Force. It's the last piece of that task force work. I know it's been very challenging. I'm going to let you describe that because you're more familiar with the process than I am. But there is some potential here, but talk to us about where we sit right now. I know we all just got a report related to this. It seems as though there was not a consensus amongst the stakeholders at the table, which I frankly find to be troubling and difficult to deal with, because that's then, we didn't have consensus. And so while there were some good ideas floated, we didn't quite get there. And so I think that leaves us, as you can see, in a little bit of a state of limbo here. So could you describe to us the output from that group, what the recommendations were, and how we might or might not be able to move forward?
I think ultimately, obviously, it's up to the board whether or not to move forward. But what I will say about I apologize, I don't have it in front of me right now, so I'm going a little bit from memory. But in general, I think there is an understanding of the need for an impervious surface charge of some point, at some level. The concern, there was not consensus on how to move forward. Specifically, there were some stakeholders that wanted exactly what would a credit program look like, and they couldn't support that without knowing those specifics. There were also some concerns about what the shift it would cause between residential and commercial, or churches, for example. So there would be definitely the need for a lot of additional work if the board wanted us to continue on on that path.
And I should have framed this. So basically, the impervious surface fee project talks about the storm water that is coming off. I'm going to simplify this. In my own mind, I have to so we've got large parking lots in our community. They are dumping stormwater into a system where the stormwater should not have to be treated. It's not wastewater, it's stormwater. And so the challenge is that we've got a lot of water dumping into the system unnecessarily, and the origin is these large parking lots. And so then it becomes a matter of, all right, well, how do we deal with that? And how do we try to figure out what kind of fee structure there should be for those that are dumping into the system through the parking lots? They own them. What would an incentive program look like where we can get them to do some of the work for us, like planting trees and creating retention basins to keep some of that water out of the system to begin with? And then what would be a charge to them, with the whole idea being that if we're going to charge here on this side for stormwater going into the system, there's then a balancing act where we could provide some relief to the residents on the other side, right? That's the whole idea. And my idea always is to create this little fund in between where we're doing remediation, so we don't have these situations to begin with. That aside, so that's the equation that we're looking at. And so this task force was a very diverse group of people, which were, from the environmental community, the sustainability community, residential, the business community was there. And so we asked them to take a look at this and figure out if we could provide some relief on this end by capturing some some revenue on this end, right? So there was no consensus. So I personally believe, and I don't know that the commission is all on the same page, so I'm going to speak for myself. I personally believe that there's some value in trying to figure this out and providing some relief to the ratepayers through this fee. I think business owners, I used to be a business owner, I think business owners understand that if they are dumping water into a system and not being charged for that, as they would otherwise if it was a residential, sewer system, I think they get that. It's just a matter of degree. It's just a matter of how much they can do, how much they should do, how much they can afford before we start causing a real challenge, to these business owners or nonprofits or the churches or whomever else has a parking lot that dumps into the system. So I know it's complicated. I know there a lot of work was done. I would be in favor of continuing to pursue this in one way, shape, or form, and maybe getting the group back together with some pretty finite ideas about how we could move forward. In my mind, it's always about compromise and trying to figure out something everybody can live with, and then that would help us, from my vantage point, help me get my arms around how this board might want to move forward. So, Commissioner, given the information related to the impervious surface fee, I'm sure you have comments as well.
Yeah, just a few comments. The immediate concern is to make sure we meet these 6 points that were brought up, the need for the rate increase. That's our immediate concern. I don't think we need to delay that because we went back and forth about the lowest that we can go. We can always adjust if the impervious fee turns out that the board agrees with it. I think we need to put a timeline on the board because we've gotten so much information from those groups that have met, and put a timeline on ourselves about yes or no. And if we can do that, that will determine whether or not we'll be able to reduce the rate maybe for the next year, but not this year. So I know we tried really hard to go as low as we could go. And so I'm comfortable with that, but still put ourselves on a timeline on making a decision.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not suggesting that this report delay anything. We don't have that kind of luxury. We don't have that luxury. We've got to get this done. And so we have to approve of something. But that's not to say that if we did come to some conclusion with that work, there might be an adjustment lower down to the fee. I would not support an adjustment higher up. So anyway, something to work on, continue to work on. Maybe we can have some impact in future as we think through. Because we do this, to be clear, we do this on an annual basis while we're projecting out for 10 years with an expectation of what those rates would look like and an understanding, I think, between the city and the county and the ratepayers. That's not to say that we don't do this every single year. And so there's always room for adjustment as we go. Couple other things then. I wanted to reference the bill, the Senate Bill 85. It's Catherine Ingram's bill. We've been asked to weigh in on this a couple of times. This is a bill that allows us to provide some relief in certain situations. That bill just got assigned to a committee. I was up there the other day and sat next to Catherine Ingram and asked her about it. So it just got assigned to a committee. We're in lame duck right now. So I think that does not bode well for the bill, because lame duck is going to be like a 2-week time period, and that's going to be the end of it, unless it gets rolled into something different. So I've asked CCAO to take a look at that. I don't know where that's going to go, but that's still in the hopper, rolling around a little bit. And then there's another report, Commissioner, that's coming forward that I asked for and that will be given to all three of us about some of these there's a program where we have an additional charge on those industries or businesses that are dumping certain kinds of waste into the system. And I know we've got a report that's coming, and I'm going to ask once again that we get that sooner than later, because there are some individuals and companies that have reached out to my office asking about it, and so I'm anxious to get that report. And Holly, do you have further information?
Just before this meeting, MSD sent it, so I haven't looked at it.
Oh, well, never mind then. All right. Well, I'll take a look at it when I get back to the office. But yeah, because that impacts the rates for some of these other organizations too. So that's all I have at this moment in time. There's a lot to digest here. So remind us about our schedule here related to these public hearings.
There is a second public hearing on Tuesday. And then, depending on the board's pleasure, we could pass a resolution as early as Thursday, the 21st. It's currently on the agenda, but it can also be amended, or
What's our deadline?
it has to be passed before the end of the year.
That's what I thought. So we do have a little bit of time. I know sooner the better, but there is a lot to digest here. So it might take a little bit more time. So, okay, Commissioner, anything else related to
Nothing
this?
else.
All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Holly, thank you really to all the teams. This whole side of the room is filled with MSD teams. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Oh, I will make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. And thank you, Larry, for your comments. All right, we're going to move into the regular agenda. The engineer is here. Welcome, Eric.
Good afternoon. Just 2 items today. Item number 1 is a resolution for an intergovernmental agreement with Delhi Township and Oak Hill School Board for the rental of a rubber-tired loader for the 2024-25 snow and ice season. We share a salt dome with Delhi Township and Oak Hills. We rent a loader to load our dump trucks, and we split that in thirds. So this is $4,360 for the engineer's office out of the Road and Bridge funds. Item number 2 is a resolution for a joint agreement with Warren County for the resurfacing of Fields Erdel Road from Ashwood Drive to Rich Road. This is a Warren County project. A small portion of Fields Erdel Road that they are paving is in Hamilton County, so we will be paying for the portion in Hamilton County, $45,580.49 out of permissive auto fund.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, any questions?
No questions.
All right, I'm going to move that we approve of items 1 and 2.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, let's move into the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioners. The consent agenda, item number 3 is a resolution. This is a temporary, this is a lease amendment to the lease with Bon Secours Mercy Health. This relates to the short-term lease with Mercy while they're over an 8-month period out at the Mercy building after the county closed on that building. Item number 4 is an MOU with facilities allocating ARPA funds to the maintenance of our satellite facility office in the amount of $811,156. Item number 5 is a budget adjustment in several departments: probation, EMA, the auditor's office, and environmental services. Item number 6 is a resolution authorizing an ARPA adjustment with the Free Store Food Bank in the amount of $478,349. Commissioner Summer Dumas spoke to this a little bit earlier today. Item number 7 is an item approving of purchase orders in the administration and the Department of Environmental Services in the total amount of $301,964. That relates to some cybersecurity equipment as well as some monitoring equipment and environmental services. Item number 8 is a resolution authorizing a purchase order then and now purchase order for HVAC services out at the River City Correctional Center. We have several items on the agenda related to credit card usage. So item number 9 is a resolution authorizing credit card usage in the Department of Communications. Item number 10 is a resolution authorizing credit card usage in environmental services. Item 11 is a resolution authorizing the use of credit card in our human resources department. Item number 12 is an item is a resolution approving and journalizing the collective bargaining agreement between the board, the county engineer, and the Teamsters local union. Item 13 is a resolution approving the tentative collective bargaining agreement between the board and the Fraternal Order of Police representing the Sheriff's Office enforcement sergeants and lieutenants. Item 14 is a resolution approving the tentative collective bargaining agreement between the board, the Fraternal Order of Police representing the Sheriff's Office enforcement captains. We have several JFS items. Item 15 is an agreement with the Career Team LLC for school youth services in the amount of $1 million. Item 16 is an agreement with the Southwest Ohio Regional Workforce Investment Board. This is for building expense reimbursements at 1916 Central Parkway in the amount of $403,750. Item 17 is an agreement with Affordable Language Services for interpretation services at JFS in the amount of $140,000. Item 18 is an agreement with Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center for nursing consultation in the amount of $1.14 million. Item 19 is an agreement with Rite of Passage in Minden, Nevada for residential treatment services in the amount of $100,000. There is an item approving the resolution for credit card usage at the law library. There's an item approving, item number 21 is a resolution authorizing credit card usage by the public defender. We have several community development block grant nonprofit funding grant funding agreements. This goes back to the staff meeting presentation of August 27th, where the board was presented these items. I'll go through them briefly. Item 22 is $25,000 to Cincy Smiles. Item 23 is $35,000 to ICRN. Item 24 is $50,000 to the Free Store Food Bank. Item 25 is $68,000 to the Valley Interfaith Community Resource Center. Item 26 is $67,000 to the Legal Aid Society. Item 27 is $60,000 to St. Vincent de Paul. 28 is $50,000 to Habitat for Humanity of Greater Cincinnati. 29 is $100,000 to the Refugee Law Center. Item 30 is credit cards, use of credit cards at probate court. Item 31 is a resolution authorizing credit card usage in the prosecutor's office. 32 is an item to receive for the record. This is the prosecutor's annual report on the use of DTAC funds for 2024 or for the year 2024. Item 33 is authorizing credit card usage in the stadium and parking department. 34, authorizing credit card usage in the treasurer's office. And item 35 is an item requesting authorization to travel at the county's expense, one employee to Dublin, Ohio in the recorder's office. And that is your consent agenda, Commissioners.
Thank you. I do want to recognize that Maria Collins is here. Thank you for all the work that you've done on the items that are in front of us today. You're the reason we're here, so thank you for getting us to this point. Commissioner Dumas, any questions or comments?
A couple comments. Item 3 about Mercy Health. I just want to thank them again. They're such great partners. It was a difficult situation. When I said difficult, there were a lot of things that needed to be ironed out by Hamilton County, by Mercy, and they were great partners. It was a win-win for them and also a win-win for us. So I don't know when we'll have another resolution related to Mercy, but I just wanted them to know that. Item 12 through 14, the collective bargaining that was done by our staff, that's not an easy job. Staff and also union worked together to come to some great conclusions that we could, of course, agree on. So I want to thank our staff and also the unions for that hard work. The other one was item 30. And Jeff, the amount of the credit card was $48,000. So I wanted to know for probate court, how many cards are we talking about? Credit cards?
Let me see if I have the item on the number of cards.
Yeah.
1 second.
It's a lot of money. 40 cards? Oh, okay.
What item was it?
30.
It looks like, Commissioners, it looks like I'm seeing 2 cards in probate court. The total, so it looks like the total limit $4,000 per month. So the $48,000 is obviously a limit for the year.
For the year. Okay. Okay. Very good. And I see Corey sitting in the audience who works very hard on that collective bargaining. He doesn't want to be recognized, but Corey is here. So thank you so much, Corey, for your hard work. Thank you for that also. That's for the year. We have, John, I just had a question, and it probably was in the summary. The $100,000 for rites of passage, is that for how many young people are we talking about for that? Do you know?
Commissioner Dumas, it's one child with very, very specific needs, and so that was a a single source contract with a
Single
facility that
source.
could provide that specific need, meet the specific needs of the child.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you. I too wanted to call out the Mercy item. And as you say, Commissioner, they've been great partners to us, and I'm looking forward to moving forward on that. I know there's a lot of buzz amongst the departments that are moving to that building, so looking forward to having those agencies move in. What the time frame is? What, we're like 8 months out, something like that?
So the lease with Mercy would be through 8 months. I would imagine the first department's probably moving in late 25, early the first quarter of 2026.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful. All right. And then I have a question about item number 32. It's a rather random question, so bear with me here. So I note that this is related to the DTAC funds. The DTAC funds also fund the land bank, and it's a certain percentage that comes out of the DTAC fund for the land bank. I know I've asked this question before. I don't know that I got an answer to it. Is there any flexibility for the county, this would be in partnership with the prosecutor's office, to determine how we're spending these funds? Is there any ability to do more, I guess is my question, related to the land bank? Or does the ORC prescribe a certain percentage over which we are not allowed to go for land bank purposes?
Commissioner, I know that there are different percentages for the DTAC, some of which go to the prosecutor's office, I think some to the treasurer's office, some to the land bank as well. So in terms of whether a portion of the amount that's going to one of those other statutory entities could be used for land bank purposes, I think that may be your question.
That is my question.
I would have to research that a little bit more with the prosecutor's office. And Mr. Dressing, I don't know if you have any specific information on that.
I do not have much familiarity with this particular fund, but I'd be happy to check into that and report back.
Just curious.
Sure.
To know if there's any flexibility. Yep. Okay, great, thank you. All right, and that's all I have. Corey, you've done always do a nice job. I feel remiss not. All right, I am going to make a motion that we approve of or receive for the record item number 3 through 35.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we have this executive session snuck in on me. I didn't have this on my original agenda, but here we are. So I'm going to move that we go into executive session pursuant to RC 121.22G3 to conduct a conference with an attorney for the public body concerning the subject of pending litigation.
Second.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Thank you.